Moshe, and I'm coming to you from Israel in the Galilee. Today's Wednesday, the 29th of April, and it's about 7:33 in the morning. And our weather in the not-so-holy Holy Land is 60 degrees now, 79 high, and sunny, straight through sun. And, they're trying to tell us rain Sunday and Monday. I don't know. I hope not. We've had so much rain. I don't know what's going on. But then if it rains, they're talking about highs in the 60s, high 60s, which is going to cool the house off a little. The house is warmed up thoroughly. I don't know if it'll rain. It's hard for them to predict out more than 48 hours. They don't do a great job here. My wife follows a bunch of meteorologists here, which I think are students, and they try to predict the weather, and I think they do a worse job than the general weather services. Okay, so what's happening today? Well, Iran found a way to defeat Trump's idea where the oil was going to back up and choke everything up. They started shipping oil by train to China. It takes 15 days, which is 40 days by ship from Iran. So because of the closure, they can't send their boats out. So now they're putting them on trains. And I'm going to give you a breakdown and show you what's really going on in terms of how much they can move on the trains. And essentially, I believe they have defeated Trump, saying they got nothing to do with their oil. They can't keep putting it in the storage tanks. They're choking, and they're going to have to shut down, and that's a big problem. Now I think they are getting enough oil out where shutdown's going to be way down the road. So we'll talk about what happens now, okay? And at the same time, Iran is trying to come up with another offer for Trump. But let me tell you something. They're light years away. Trump is perfectly happy to sit there with him and play the negotiation game because he's choking him with his blockade. Okay? He's squeezing the air out of them, right? And what does he care? Whatever he does, with Iran, as long as that blockade goes on, the vice keeps tightening on Iran, tighter and tighter and tighter, and then what? Well, then their oil is going to start backing up badly, and that's going to be a problem. Now, it's complicated how you do this with trains. We'll give you the numbers and all of that. On the home front here in Israel, Netanyahu is starting to, they're calling him now. The courts are telling him, hey, Benji, we don't got no more wars. Show up in court. Now, because Netanyahu is kind of showing up in court and actually using Herzog, the president. Now, the president of Israel is pretty much like a Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, is not really, he's way the heck down below the Prime Minister, like 3 levels, He's independently elected, so he doesn't have to listen to the Prime Minister, but he doesn't have much power either. He's a figurehead more than he is anything else. He can issue pardons. That's the way they wrote their law. He can issue pardons. So Netanyahu is trying to get Herzog to pardon him, and Trump is putting pressure on Herzog to pardon him. So now they're talking mediation. Mediation is let's make a deal, okay? Now, do we think Netanyahu's going to say, I'll resign from politics and never hold office again, and make it in the form of a court order? So if he violates it, he's in contempt of court, and the court could rip him off the streets and put him in jail? No, he won't sign that. He'll sign a letter that he won't run for office again. He did something like that already and violated it. So he doesn't care about that kind of stuff. Lying is good, This is Satan's world. He's the head of all the nations right now. So he might. Mediation is going to involve. He pleads guilty. He says he's guilty. He did some things. Okay? Then he's got to get the high court to agree that it's okay. We love you, Benji. But they realize he's a piece of garbage completely. They know what he is. Okay? And, I'm sorry. And, but that's as far as it's going to go. I'm not going to jail. I'm not paying any big fine. You want to give me a 5,000 shekel fine? Okay, no problem. But I'm not staying out of politics. This is a combination of things. We're coming into the next prime minister election, which is October. We think it's the 27th this year. Now, the actual date can vary. I don't know if they firmed up October 27th yet, but the campaigning has begun. I get all these SMS messages, Okay, so, and then also they're talking about if there's no mediation, there might be a pardon. So we're getting all different kinds of, signals from Netanyahu, and we'll go through that. He's trying to continue the curse on Israel for another term of office, is what he's trying to do. So he's not going to come up with anything where there's no, I don't think, look, people say his health is bad. Do I know? I know, believe me, he didn't go back the last time he went to the hospital for prostate. You could take that one to the bank, okay? I'm guaranteeing you that wasn't the case. He did have a pacemaker put in a year and a half ago, or right after I don't know when it was, maybe 2 years ago, something, I can't remember exactly, that it was an external pacemaker. And then that lasted a while, then he went back in the hospital, and they put one inside him. I really don't understand much about pacemakers, guys. I don't know. But it's more serious when it's inside. So he's got an internal pacemaker. And then after he had that some months, he had to go back in the hospital. And he said it was prostate, which is a sick joke. And I don't know what, came of that. Now, there are rumors, and I'm telling you, there's no verification on this whatsoever. It's not, there's not a little verification, completely absent any verification. So it could be just completely fiction. People ask me, is he dead? Is he dead? There's rumors that he's dead. No, he's not dead. You can't conceal anything like that in a small country like Israel. He's not dead. He's alive and kicking. They say he might have cancer. So, okay, I don't know what's wrong with Netanyahu other than we had it confirmed that he had a pacemaker. Okay, he had an external and then they did the internal. That's how I remember it, if I got it right. And then what happened? And then what's next? Well, if he's really ill, now what could he be ill from? Well, he could be ill from the heart thing and the stress of going to all these meetings with the wars and the negotiations and flying to DC and all that. Well, that may have been a lot for him, and his medical advisors, the doctors, may have told him that it's time to step down. So he couldn't just step down with his criminal cases, because then they would just drag him into court, you know. Um, and if he tried to go to the hospital, the doctors would be really sticking their neck out if they said, well, he can't appear in court. And then the court, the High Court, Supreme Court, they call it, it's not really the Supreme Court, it's the High Court, could call their own doctor in to verify it. And if the doctors were fibbing, lying about how sick he was, I don't know what they would call it, contempt of court, frauding the court. They could. I mean, what are the possibilities? Lose their medical license, a massive fine, go to jail? Probably not, but their medical license might go. Okay, so they could go to jail, for that. And I don't know how far the court would take it, but so he's thinking, okay, this might be the case. I don't know. The curse might be lifting. He is a curse, and in my opinion, and it might be that he is wanting to, maybe on medical advice, just get out, or you're going to get more heart attacks, or we're not going to be able to keep you from getting sick, and so now he wants to get out, and he wants no problem. So he might actually be telling them, the courts, that okay, I'll agree to this, that I did things I shouldn't have done. I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, Netanyahu, we forgive you, and I will stay out of politics the rest of my life, and that's it. So they don't come after him financially. They don't come after him in any way, shape, or form. He would want to be exonerated from any charges of anything that occurred during his 20-something years as prime minister. So all of it goes away, right? There's nothing. And, they're going to scratch their heads. What are they going to look at? Well, maybe he can't work anymore like he has to. So, they might try to come down harder on him. I don't know. I think what they'd be very happy if they knew they get rid of him from politics once and for all. They would want him to not be the head of the Likud party. Now, that's not holding a government office, so I'm not so sure they could impose that. So he has to step out of the Likud party. But if he's going to leave politics, what does he need to be in the Likud party? The reason would be that he has a lot of power. If he's the head of the largest political party in Israel, he's got tremendous power. But they might want that to go away too. Because he could still use that Likud party to go after the judges and get even with them, so they probably want that to go away too. I don't know. Mediation is, making a deal, okay? You sue somebody. A guy repaired your roof, the roof leaks, but he did repair the roof, and you paid him for a good job, and it wasn't a good job, and now you sit down in mediation instead of having a trial, and you try to hash out what happens, okay? On the one side, the customer wants, half his money back or something, right? On the other side, the contractor wants to either just go back and repair it, or give the guy 10% back, and then they sit there and they figure out what the deal is, and the mediator, who's usually a judge but not operating as a judge, just a mediator, tries to go in and make everybody make a deal. And if everybody makes a deal, there is no trial. But you got to give in. He can't go to mediation with the Supreme Court in Israel and say, I didn't do a darn thing, let's just discharge my case. unless he says, I'll never go into politics again, and gives up the Likud party. Then they might do it. And if he's really sick, that might happen. So the contender to take over is Bennett. And Bennett he was in from 1 year, a few years ago, and it was nice. He started knocking the ultra-Orthodox down, like with the immigration people trying to come to Israel. He was taking their power away from that. And he was going to build more hospitals, 7, and he was going to revamp the older hospitals, and he was going to put up 400,000 cheap housing units, and that was probably just to get started. So he was trying to do a lot of the things that Netanyahu would probably in private say over my dead body, and Netanyahu won't speak to roughly 1/3 of Israelis are living at the poverty line and have food insecurity. He won't speak to that because then he has to do something about it. Okay? So Bennett will. Bennett's hooking up with the left wing, so there's going to be but the left wing don't let people shoot missiles and rockets in here. Listen, the left wing will always try to give peace a chance, okay? But when the rockets and the drones come, they know that they'll feed us into ovens and burn us alive, our lovely neighbors, if we're not careful. So they're not stupid. They'll fight voraciously if that starts. But if it's just talking, they'll try to make concessions where Netanyahu may not. All right? So they're not real left wing that Bennett is hooking up with. They're like, here's center, and then you got the right wing of varying degrees, and then you got the left wing of varying degrees. So this is super left, like America or something with Obama, Hey, let's get rid of men and women bathrooms, Let's create 42 different sexes or 89 different sexes. And, that's super left. We don't have that. So these guys, you might have 1 or 2 in the Knesset. I don't even think you have 2. There's 1 I could think of. Maybe there's 2 out of 120. But centrist, Netanyahu says he's centrist. He's not. Netanyahu is a little left to center, okay? A little bit, but Smotrich and Ben-Gvir pull him over, so maybe he's center now with those 2 guys, maybe. These guys are middle, the ones that's supporting Bennett, Yair Lapid and Yesh Atid. They're like in the middle between centrist and left wing. So they're not serious left wing, but they have no interest in, grabbing the land from the Arabs and getting all the countries irritated at them and, building a temple or anything. They're not interested in that. But the good news is they don't get along well at all with the Ultra-Orthodox. And the Ultra-Orthodox need to be knocked down a couple of pegs. They're gone way out in left field. They're goners, okay? So the left wing will knock them down. And they'll threaten to leave Israel if they got to go in the army. And maybe they will. But maybe they won't. If they leave Israel, I could just about tell you where they're going to go. I can't guarantee it. But Egypt, I told you you'd never have to return to Egypt, but you'll return, They'll go back to Egypt, That'll be a disaster for them. They'll wish they never did that. But I don't know. They did a nasty protest last night. They're calling it a day of rage that they have to go and fight in the military. So they've created a concept where they're, let's call them Aryan Jews, okay, super Jews. And the other people they'll refer to you as a historical Jew. You're not a practicing Jew because you don't follow extra biblical books like the Talmud and the Kabbalah, which is not Torah, not Bible, contradicts Bible. And the Talmud says that Yeshua was not a son of God, not a Messiah, not anointed, was a bastard, didn't have a father, never rose from the dead, and that sort of stuff. So, you can only imagine how, interested in these days and recompenses that Jehovah would be in having them continue those doctrines in Israel. This is coming to redemption. We're not, but they wake up when Yeshua appears at redemption because they go into mourning. That's in Zechariah 12, starting in probably verse 11, maybe 10, for a few verses down. So, they're mourning over that, what they did to their Messiah. And these guys have them blotting out the name of God. They're not allowed to say Jehovah. They teach the Jews are not allowed to. They have to say Hashem, which means the name. Well, when some religious leader tells you Hashem, the name, how the heck do I know who he means? You know what I'm saying? All right. So we're going to have an interesting time today. So let me go into the live stream. Make sure we got a live stream. Okay. We're still having shipping issues. We ordered some more, I don't know what you want to call them, supplements. And we've ordered them now. I think we're on the third day, at least 2 days, maybe 3. And usually they ship the same day. They haven't even shipped it. So I don't know what's going on. Some people are shipping, others don't. Amazon, the last I checked 2 or 3 days ago, they opened up shipping to Israel again, but their shipping is going via postal only. They're running postal services, which is 4 to 6 weeks or something. Yeah, it's absurd. I mean, the postal, when it's working right, goes about 10 days. It's not bad, 12, 14 sometimes, but it's not good either. Sometimes it'll get stuck for 5, 6 days. It's highly unreliable, and then you have to go to a post office to pick it up, or they could drop it off at some stupid pickup point, which is usually a supermarket, and they'll pick the pickup point 100 miles away or more. Literally, they're crazy. It's a very, very bad post office. The one in our little community here opens, I think, 4 days a week for 2 hours a day, and you can't do outgoing mail there. The service is so bad you can't mail a letter there. You have to get in the car and drive a considerable distance at $9 a gallon gasoline to send a letter. You see what kind of ridiculous service it is? And they won't bring an international package to your house, period. Okay? So they got what's called EMS, right? Where you send it from, you can send it from Argentina, America, France, whatever. And they're supposed to bring it to the house. And they don't. Israel just doesn't do it. Well, the other post offices are charging the people for home delivery and they won't do it. Now, in some areas in Israel, they will. In my area, they won't. The only people that get a package delivered to the house around the rural areas is those that have a blind certification. Then they bring it to your house. So the post office is really crap. If you send a package from Tel Aviv to Eilat or something like that, what do they call it? EMS, I think, inside Israel. They'll get it there in about 3 days. So from inside Israel, they'll bring a package to the door anywhere. But with international, they won't. What's wrong with these people? You understand? It makes no sense. They make no no sense. They make no sense. The post office is really fairly horrible. Okay, let me go into the live stream and see what's going on. Put a post up. So, looks like we got plenty of sound. All right. Let me get my post up here, which isn't going to take a long time. Checking for typos. Okay. Now let me pin this. And that's pinned and done. And all people coming in. Yeah, people are coming in. Let me shut the sound and put this down. Okay. Being a Bible believing site, Old and New Testament, I'm going to do some praise, and I have no control of people joining in or not joining in. That's up to you. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 All right, so let's get into the big news. What Trump is doing is going like this to Iran. And is it working? It is. I don't think Trump's so great, but I give credit where credit is due. Okay? And this idea that Trump came up with the blockade, I think is on a 10 scale, 10 being the best, it's a 9.8. It's a superb idea. It's a fantastic idea. There's no warfare going on, and he's choking Iran to death. And if they don't do anything about it, they're going to dry up. Like they'll have no money in their coffers. Their currency has devalued in the last days or weeks tremendously. They're suffering economically. Trump is saying that the people of Iran are trying to overthrow the mullahs and fight against them, but I think it's really a very difficult situation for them to do that. They're well armed and they're vicious and savage, and they'll kill them. But I think some of it's going on. All right. And there's another amphibious assault ship, I think, called the Boxer, that's coming over here. I don't think it's necessarily here yet, but it's chugging out here. So Trump's got his carriers, he's got his military assets, he's got his special forces, and he's waiting to break the back of Iran with the oil. Now, just I did this in detail yesterday, so I'll go through it quickly today. The problem with the oil is this. The wells are working, they got those things that go up and down, like you see in the movies and the LA cop shows. Somebody gets killed by the oil fields in California, and in the background you see that big metal thing rocking it. Yeah, it's the oil well pumping, They might have different kinds of oil wells in the Middle East, I don't know. So they're getting the oil out, and they're putting it in pipelines, and they're taking it. 90% of it is going to Kharg, Kharg in English, island, which is about 15 miles off the coast of Iran, and that's where the tankers dock up. Okay? And they fill their boats with oil, and they take off and bring it to whoever they're bringing it to. Right? It could be a boat coming in from any country, filling up and taking it back to their own country, or it could be an Iranian tanker or Chinese or who knows what, right? Okay. So, since they're not able to ship any oil out for some days now because of Trump's blockade, they have oil tankers that are full of oil, but Trump won't let them leave. So those ships are full, right? And you can't fill them up anymore. Where are you going to put the oil? So they have massive storage tanks around Kharg Island. And these storage tanks hold huge amounts of oil. So when the ships would pull up and dock at Kharg Island, they had, I guess hoses coming from the storage tanks, and they must have had a pumping system that would push the oil into the hose, and it would go into the hull of the ship. Maybe they ran three hoses at the same time. I don't know what they did. It takes hours to fill these boats up. They don't fill it. You take a little boat or even a yacht, and you go there and you say, well, you're going to fill your gas tanks up. Well, some of these yachts say, they got like 4,000 or 5,000 gallons or something like that. It might take you, because you're using a little gas, it might take you 3-4 hours or something. But it takes a long time. I've seen cruise ships I was on dock up in the islands in the Caribbean, and I saw how they do it. I don't think was it my boat, or I don't remember. I think one time I saw it on my boat. I think I saw it on other boats too. They just stick a hose in the side of the boat. I think there's a hose like this, and the boat's docked up for some hours. Like you go to Nassau, it's going to be there for probably you could get off the boat at 8 in the morning, and it'll leave at 5. So you probably can be filling from 9 to 4. So you'd have several hours. You could probably fill most of the tank, if not all of it. All right, so let's keep going with this. So when there's no more room in the storage tanks, and the pipeline is pushing the oil in, okay, what happens is it reaches a point where you can no longer put oil in the tank because there's no more room in the tank. Liquids don't compress, okay? They don't compress. Gas compresses, not liquids. So you're out of luck and if you keep trying to put the oil in, it's just going to back up, choke up the pumping system, and you got to shut it off. You can't keep trying it to do it because you can't compress liquids. Okay, they don't compress. Okay, even water, you can't compress water. When you think about it, it makes sense, right? I gotta see what this is. Might be a delivery. It may not be. What is this? Well, the guys, this is what you get in Israel. He's saying that they delivered it already, but I have a feeling I've got these messages before, and usually means it'll be delivered today. So we'll see what happens. All right, that's good. This thing keeps clicking. I don't know what. This is a backup cable I got. I think it's not great. What am I? Some kind of problem here with. Hold on. This doesn't want to close. Let me see what I can do to get rid of this. I'm certainly not going to open this. What the heck is it saying? I got to get rid of this. It looks malicious. I don't know where it came from. Keeps saying me to open and it won't go away. It's got me, it's upside down. It's got me, I'll have to reboot and see if I get rid of it that way. I don't know where this thing came from. Get rid of it though, sooner or later. There might be some new type of attack they have where you don't open it, so you can't release any viruses, but it blocks the screen. But I think rebooting it is probably going to get rid of it. Let's take a look. The nice thing about AI is if you had some problem like that, AI will tell you how to get rid of it. No, it looks like it's alleviated. I don't know where the heck it came from, but it's gone. For that kind of stuff, Apple is good. It doesn't let that stuff work in your system. But I understand now that the Windows and doesn't let viruses work in there as well. So okay, so that's the problem. So they're defeating Trump. Let me explain to you what's going on with the trains. Okay, I looked all this stuff up. An average uh, train car, a tanker car for a train, like Southern Pacific or something like that, is 714 barrels of oil. Now, a big train in the United States can pull 100 cars, but this in Iran and Russia, it's going to pull 70 to 90 cars, so let's say 80 cars. Let's go for round numbers, 60,000 barrels of oil per train. Okay? All right. Now, A small oil tanker, a baby little oil tanker, is 100,000 barrels. So a whole train load is a little more than half of a small baby oil tanker. Medium oil tanker, it goes about 300,000 barrels. Okay. And when you get the super tanker, they're 2 million to 4 million barrels. So they're not pushing a lot of oil with their trains, okay? Now, the transit time to run a train from Iran to China is 15 days. The transit time to take a ship that leaves the Persian Gulf and winds up in China is about 40 days. Okay? So you have a reasonably substantial amount of time difference, okay? But remember, listen to me, 15 days to deliver the oil to China. Now, when you're at China, I don't know, maybe the train could bring other stuff back. It can't, because it's running tanker cars for oil. So it can't bring bananas and bread. I can't do that. All right, so now the train has to go back to Iran. So you got 15 days there, then you got 15 days back. With the ship, you had 40 days there and 40 days back. Maybe if it was empty, it gets back in 30 days or something. I don't know. Maybe not. All right. One good thing about having an oil tanker full of oil is, what's the big fear of a cruise ship? Every ship fears a collision, so that's moot, really. I mean, every boat, including a rowboat, worries about a collision. But let's talk about the fear for a cruise ship. A cruise ship goes up with decks from the usually they call it the Lido deck, where the swimming pool is and all of that. Okay, then they put residential decks up with cabins, and they'll have anywhere from 8 to 20 decks high. And when you start getting to 12 and more decks, there's so much space there, and it's just a square thing sticking up. The wind could blow that and push the boat to the side. If the boat goes 1 degree more than 45 degrees, it could go all the way down into the water. The boat can handle getting pushed 45 degrees. Let's say if it gets pushed 55 degrees, it's probably not coming back. Okay? So there's nothing in this structure coming up from the deck. It doesn't have oil, it doesn't have water, it doesn't have milk, it doesn't have heavy containers. It's nothing there. So they got to be careful about it getting blown over, getting a strong wind. What's a strong wind? Well, I think you probably at about 35 miles an hour, you start getting into problem winds. I guess if you start getting in a real storm and you get 75-mile-an-hour winds, it might start pushing the boat over. I don't know the statistics on it, but the guys driving the boats got basically a weather station on the boat. And if the weather station's not enough, they communicate with their home port, the headquarters of the cruise line for the country they departed from, and they get fantastic weather reports. So they know how to stay out of trouble. So if they see bad weather coming at them, they're going to see it a day or two early at least, right? Okay? So they can go 25 nautical miles an hour. So that's in 4 hours, 100 nautical miles. 8 hours, 200. That's different weather already. When you're 100, 200 miles away, you're in different weather. Really, 100 miles is different weather. So I mean, maybe even 50 miles. So they need just a few hours to get going and get out of the path of the storm and get away from the storm. And they watch that very carefully because they're worried about getting blown over. Now, a container ship would have something to fear too, but not. It's different because the containers are full of stuff, tonnage. So they stack them up and they make a wall you get affected by wind. But the other thing is these cabins are relatively empty. They got a bed in there, which weighs nothing, a dresser, a lamp, a nightstand, your luggage, nothing. There's no, whereas a container is packed floor to ceiling with goods. So you're going to have, substantial weight. So that bears the boat down, it makes it harder to just tilt the boat over, right? Okay. So Iran can get out some of their oil, which means the amount of time till they shut down their oil fields. In other words, when the tanks are full and they're not selling oil and keeping pumping it out, and those pipelines constantly bringing more oil into the tanks, they've got a deadline. When they hit that deadline, the tanks are full. They've got to shut the oil pumps in the oil field down. And you don't throw a switch like a light switch and then come back and turn it back on again. It's a massive undertaking because when you stop it, the oil in all the pipelines is going to be there and it's going to be clogged up and decomposing, and it's got wax in there and other things that'll solidify. And in the early stages, it'll make the pipeline like thick gunk, and the oil tanks too. And then as it progresses, it won't just be thick gunk. It'll be like really thick, heavy gunk, almost solidified. It may even solidify. And then to clean this stuff out is a big undertaking. You got to use all kinds of equipment. You got to heat it up. I think in the case of Iran, it may take months to clean the tanks and the pipeline. It could be months. The other thing is if it stays closed long enough, the salvageability of this oil system could be gone. In other words, it ain't working anymore. You got to start over and rebuild it. It's so bad. You got to rebuild it. Now what could Iran do if they want to be complete morons about it? They could dump the oil into the Persian Gulf, massive amounts of oil, and create not an ecological disaster of a great magnitude. Do you think the other nations of the world would think that was funny? It would ruin the Persian Gulf. It's not going to be what it is, and it's going to go all the way out into the Gulf of Oman and into the Indian Ocean. It's going to wash up on shores at great distances away, ruin beaches. It'd be, I don't think the world would, if you started dropping, let's say you're talking 50 million barrels of oil. A barrel is many, many gallons. I think it's 47 gallons. A barrel is almost 50 gallons, not quite. So if you started, tens of millions of barrels of oil out there, you'd have oil like this thick. Of course, all the fish and the plants and all that are going to die. You'd ruin the ecosystem, all that whole area over there. Could Iran do that? 100%. Are they sick enough to do it? I think they are. How does that work? Well, they tell America that if you don't remove the blockade, we're going to start releasing oil into the Persian Gulf every day. We're going to release, 3 million or 2 million barrels a day so we don't bog our system down. So every day you do this, we're going to put 2 million barrels into the Persian Gulf. Don't think Iran's doing this, America's doing it. It's their fault. Blame them. And then what does Trump do? I don't know what Trump does. Do you know Trump is putting his picture on American passports to celebrate the 250th anniversary of America? I saw what his picture looked like. His face is like, they're putting Trump's picture on the U.S. passport. Nobody ever put a president's picture on the passport. They got that eagle guy, an eagle, a bird on there. That's nuts. He's not dead. Usually in America, they don't put people on the money until they're dead. I'm not so sure that Trump wouldn't come up with a $200 bill with this picture on it. I'm not so sure that Trump wouldn't come up with a $500 bill with this picture on it. I don't know if America is going to increase those denominations. They might. The dollar is pretty weak right now, so I don't know what Trump's going to do. I don't think he can go and change what's on the $100 bill. I don't think he could change the president on the existing bills. He can't come up with a gold coin. That's not feasible because the value of gold fluctuates so much, and put his picture on it. It would just be a commemorative coin. Like they would say 1 ounce of gold, and maybe they'd strike it with $20 on it, like the old double eagle. A single eagle was $10, a double eagle was $20. America never really had a 50. They might have had a $50 commemorative briefly or something like that, which was negotiable, but I don't know if they ever did. Mexico had that. America probably had it once. Maybe they made 10,000 or something. I don't know. It's a collector item. So yeah, I could see Trump doing that. The problem they got with paper money of higher denominations is it makes it easier for drug cartel people to move mountains of money around. So it used to be, if you go back to I think they stopped this around the mid-60s. America had $1,000 bills in circulation. Now, if you go back, let's say 1963, $1,000 back then, it was probably worth $7,000 or $8,000 today, even 10,000. So that was a large amount of money. A $100 bill was a large amount of money back then. Okay? But people usually with paper money were running around with $1, $5, $10, and a 20 was a pretty substantial value. People rarely would carry 50s and 100s. The wealthier class did, and they had the 1,000. But you had. If you went to a store and they didn't know who you were and you were buying a pair of shoes, you gave them $1,000 bill, they might not take it. they don't know what to do. I mean, if you go to a local restaurant and they know who you are and that you've been going there for 11 years and you gave them $1,000 bill, they'd probably take it. So uh, the $1,000 bill had its limitations, and then they got rid of it. Now, if you look on the internet, you'll see that America had $500 bills, which I think got eliminated a long time ago. They weren't around in the 60s, as far as I can recall. They had gold certificates that were 10,000, 50,000, and $100,000. So they had a single piece of paper that was a gold certificate worth $100,000. Now, I think these things were just being used. Anything more than $1,000, I think, was never really in circulation, but they weren't intended for that. They were supposed to be pretty much used for bank transactions, bank-to-bank transactions. They weren't, but I mean, they did get into circulation, but a lot of people didn't want to take it. I mean, who's going to go sell the house to some stranger? Back then a house was maybe, a big house was $10,000, $12,000, and they gave you, $11,000 bills, and they want you to sign your house over to them, and you could find out you had counterfeit bills. But I don't know how you could go to a store and make a purchase and give them a $10,000 bill. I mean, they'd be afraid to take it. I don't think anybody. Look, if you're going to counterfeit $100 bill, maybe you could spend $2 or $3 to make them. Okay, maybe they probably spend 50 cents, but you could. Okay, it would make some sense, but if you're talking a $10,000 bill, people wouldn't mind spending $50 to make it. So people just aren't going to want to accept that. So anyway, I think that putting a $200 bill up in America would certainly work. People would be grateful for it. So instead of 10 bills equaling 1,000, 5 equal 1,000. Could I see a $500 bill in America? Yeah, Trump could do that too, but he can't put his picture on both of them. So if there was going to be a 200 and a 500. Trump would make sure he's on the 500, and I don't know who the heck he would put on the 200. Or they might skip a 200 and just go straight to a 500. So then, if you got a $500 bill, putting $1 million, let's run the math on that. This is what they're afraid of, okay? Okay, so 2,000 bills becomes $1 million. Could you put 2,000 bills in your pocket? It'd be a lot of money bulging in your pockets, Could you put it in a carry-on, a little aftershave case or a leather case you carry around with notes and different things? Yeah, you could. Would it be difficult to do that? No. No, you'd be easy to get it. I mean, a stack of 100 is probably less than an inch. Yeah, you could put it in there. $1,000 bill would be 1,000 pieces of paper. Even that would be, you'd be stuffing your pockets. You could do it though. You could do it with, yeah. It's see, they don't want that because then the drug dealers, if they're moving $10 million, it's not going to fill an SUV up. It's going to fill one suitcase. They're afraid of that. But I think now they move a lot of money with the Bitcoin type stuff. Um, and then they have no money transportation. They got a drug transportation problem. But you can't get rid of the drug transportation problem. So anyway, Trump seems to favor a digital currency so he can make as much money as he wants, print it out of nowhere, and do stuff like that. But all right, so we're watching this thing with Iran closely, and right now Trump's plan is to do nothing because he's breaking their bank. Okay? And Iran's plan is to come up with something, and they just did it. Now, before we stopped fighting, Netanyahu was bombing railroad tracks and stations, railroad stations, not track stations in Iran. So he knew what they were doing already. So can we just go in and bomb their railroad stations again? Yeah. It's probably pretty easy. There's probably a line, a railroad set of tracks that they got to use. And all you got to do is find where those tracks are on a bridge that maybe is 100 or 200 feet over a chasm, a valley, something like that, and you blow that up, and that's going to take a year, to fix, and that's it. You could just blow the tracks up easily in different places, and it'll take them a long time to fix it if you blew the tracks up in 20, 30 places. But if you just knock these overpasses, well, they build it, it's like a bridge, right? And that's all you got to knock out. Okay? A lot of times it goes over water. Sometimes it just goes over a valley because they don't want to have the train go, like that and, just keep it going straight. Um, there's other places it probably goes through mountains where you could, you know, blow the tracks up and bring the earth down, and you just got to stall them. If you could cut the trains for 2 weeks, you're back where you started, then they're going to choke up again. Or you don't even need 2 weeks, a week even. So, that could happen. They might use the Iranian, we the people, the protesters, to go out there and operate like uh, what's the right word? Like a revolutionary force and blow this stuff up. They can blow these things up with shoulder-fired anti-tank missiles. Would probably, I mean, you'd have to use several, but you could probably knock one of these bridges out real seriously if you just shot a handful of anti-tank missiles in there and hit the right structures. It'd probably collapse. By any stretch, it's going to take a month or more to rebuild, and that's all you need. Now, if Iran gets their hands on enough trains with oil tankers and they start running 3 trains a day, but they can't. They don't have that many. Once the train leaves, you're not going to see the train for 30 days or more. So I don't know how many trains they got, but what I think this is, it's just relieving enough of the pressure off of their oil infrastructure that they're not going to have that kind of problem. I think when Iran is working good, they're pushing about 2 million barrels a day. They're not going to get 2 million barrels a day on trains, I don't believe. They probably have to have thousands of tanker cars and locomotives. Now, if somebody blows their train tracks up, what does China do? Well, they're not going to thank them. China's going to get hot under the collar. I don't know what they'll do. China's position is, hey, shut up. Just because Iran wants to kill Israel and America and kill all the infidels in the world, that's no reason for you to interfere with me getting my oil supply so I could run my factories and break your back economically, So I imagine the Pentagon is sitting here thinking about what to do. And I'm telling you, the chance of Iran dropping oil in the Persian Gulf is serious. I think everybody would go after them then, Europe, everybody. But they might do it. They might do it 1 day or 2 days or even 3 days. And the world may come unglued and, they're going to say, end the blockade. That's going to hit Trump the way the human shields hit him. And he didn't bomb the electrical plants or the water desalinators. So I don't know if Trump got the stomach for this. If they start pouring oil into the Persian Gulf. If they do it once or twice, it might be recoverable, but if they did it every day for a week, I don't think you'd recover. So we got a real problem with Iran. And they're supposed to come back with another proposal to Trump. Their first proposal a day or two ago was we'll end our blockade of the Persian Gulf, Trump, and you do the same thing and let us go about our business and sell the oil. And one day down the road, we'll perhaps talk again about nuclear material and stuff like that. And we're not going to talk about ballistic missiles. We're not going to talk about supporting our terrorists like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. And we're not going to talk about much of anything. And Trump isn't going for that. So now they're waiting for Iran to come back with another proposal, which means they have to offer something else. Now, Trump really wants to get his hands on the Iranian oil. And that's why you think he's acting weak and stupid. If he destroys the country, he has to walk away from the Iranian oil. Okay? And that's going to kill him. That's going to kill him. He's hoping for Iran to come to their knees. And then Trump finds a way to get rid of the mullahs and free elections or something like that. And put the Shah's son in. How well that'll work, I don't know. I really don't know. The UAE pulled out of OPEC. And what's so important about that? Well, Iran's in OPEC, and the UAE hates Iran because they attacked them so badly. Sorry, I had another stupid pop-up from this idiot thing. Okay, so I'm sorry, I was back explaining UAE. UAE has dropped out of OPEC. And this is, we hope, the beginning of a surge of other countries dropping out of OPEC. Iran is in OPEC, and the UAE hates Iran because Iran attacked them for no good reason. And the UAE said they wouldn't trust Iran again for many generations. So OPEC tells them how much oil they can produce and what price they can sell it at. So now the UAE can produce more oil per day, and if they want, lower the price. Will Saudi Arabia follow suit? I don't know. I'll tell you, it's a possibility. UAE and Saudi are usually in sync, so they may go. What about Qatar, Kuwait? I don't know. UAE was probably trying to get OPEC to throw Iran out, but didn't go anywhere. What Iran is doing now is repairing the damage to their missile cities, their mobile launchers, moving their stockpiles of missiles around, making new missile cities and tunnels and stuff like that. So they're enjoying the ceasefire because it lets them build up for a big attack. If they can't make a deal with Trump, which isn't going to work because they'll never give Trump what he wants, then they'll probably start fighting or dump oil in the Persian Gulf or both. If you dump enough oil in the Persian Gulf, like several million barrels, and you light it on fire, you could keep the ships out of there for an amazingly long period of time, as long as you keep dumping oil out every day. You could keep the place in places, seriously, for weeks. Nobody's going to bring their ship in there when there's fire on the water. No one do that. No way. The way I think this is going to end sooner or later, many nations are going to turn against Iran and destroy it. Prophecy is that way. Once you hit the water desalinators, you're, at most a week away from the people leaving the country. I imagine a lot of people that could already left Iran, but they're not going to talk about that. Not the Iranians. All right, let's. U.S. State Department will start issuing passports with an illustration of President Trump in honor of America's 250th Independence Day. Now, I can't understand how Trump is getting some relevance in this, that because America's 250 years old and he happens to be the president, that he should be on the passport. One would think George Washington would be the one to put on there, right? I don't know. Okay. So I should tell you who is in OPEC anyway, so you understand. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, UAE, Venezuela, Nigeria, Algeria, Libya, Congo, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, then you got Russia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Mexico, Oman, Bahrain, Malaysia, South Sudan, Brunei, Sudan. Yeah, that's a pretty substantial operation. And I think that the UAE is sort of trying to say, throw Iran out and maybe I'll come back, but I'm not going to have anything to do with those Iranians. Maybe. A lot of OPEC doesn't, worry about Iran, like Russia, for instance. They like Iran. So I don't know how quick they're going to want to throw Iran out. I think a lot of them don't care, but the ones that got missile and drone attacks by Iran, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, are not happy. They see Iran as a threat that could rise up again any time and needs to be eradicated. So they're in camp with Trump. They don't trust this Iran anymore. So if you've got, let's say 4 or 5 big producers jacking up their oil production, they could do pretty good. Let's see what the price of oil was a barrel in 1965. That ought to be interesting. Let's take a look. What was the price of a barrel of crude oil in 1965? $3 a barrel. That's when you were buying low-grade gas, regular, for about 19-20 cents, and the high test, like Super Shell, was a quarter, 25 cents. And these guys were multimillionaires back then. So now they've gone up 30 times. Does that mean that inflation's really up 30 times? No. A lot of it is a fear factor going on here, psychological. Okay, not necessarily reality. It's a lot of fear. Iran is using infrared heat-seeking missiles now, anti-aircraft missiles, which are in man-pads, shoulder-fired, and they're probably getting these from Russia, maybe China. So they're causing more risk to American planes and Israeli planes, but it hasn't really caused, problems in a big way. So, it's just more problems they got to deal with. It's not a game changer. So Trump's letting Iran build their missile cities, and if they want to go attack again with their missile cities, they're going to get bombed they're going to be looking at another 5 or 10 or 15,000 bombs hitting them. And in the meantime, Trump is just squeezing the lifeblood out of them with his blockade. But now they got a way to come back with the railroads. So if you give them enough time, they'll buy railroad cars from other countries, stuff like that. They might sell oil in India that way. India has a massive train setup. They built the trains a long time ago, and they got a huge amount of them. So they could be helpful to the Iranians, I suppose, by giving them trains or just running their own trains in to get oil and come back that way. That could be what's going on. And if they could reach a level where they're pulling 2 million barrels a day into the trains, then they don't have any issues anymore. I think if they can pull 1 million barrels a day out to the trains, they'll be okay. Then Trump's blockade is only partially effective because they'll be getting a lot of money in. Look, let's say they get 1 million barrels a day out, which is low for them, okay? And they're selling it for not 95 or $100. Let's say they're selling it for $88, a discount. Okay, we'll go $85. We'll be generous. That's $85 million a day coming in, right? Let's say times 30. So they get $2.5 billion a month. Could Iran run on $2.5 billion a month? Probably not well or not great, but it could run. So they're saying, go ahead, Trump, go block the waterway. We'll just use the trains. Now, you're not going to see this go on airplanes. Okay, it's just not going to happen, okay? If you're going to send an oil tanker on a plane, you're probably going to have to charge, $250 a barrel or something like that. It's going to cost a fortune, okay? And the planes can't bring a meaningful amount. You're talking about a train with 80 cars, each car holding 714 barrels. What's a big plane gonna hold? 1,500 gallons, 1,500 barrels. It's not feasible. It just doesn't work. They don't have the pumping stuff set up at the airports. It's just not something they could just do. But the trains, yeah. They're just probably taking any kind of tanker train, like grain. They steam clean it and wash it out and everything. Right? Like for grain, or for any kind of liquid. Okay. And they just could run those cars. China might send their own trains to Iran. So now America got to blow up the Chinese train. Well, not really, because all they got to do is blow up the Iranian tracks. That's all. I think push comes to shove, Trump will wait and try it and see what happens. Blow up some of the train tracks. And, he's not a complete idiot. He knows that when he does that, China's going to start having a hissy fit, so he'll just tell him, come to Venezuela, come to America. That's what he'll do. He's not going to go tell him, go suck wind and dry up. He'll say, oh, I'll sell you oil. He'd love to get China dependent on his oil. That'd be one of the best things he did in his whole presidency, because then he could control China. But China's not the village idiot. They're not going to really want to let any of that happen. Head of the Iranian judiciary. The assets of people who collaborated with the attacking enemy will be confiscated according to the law, increasing the penalty for espionage and cooperation with hostile regimes. I don't know, it sounds like a witch hunt on their own people. Iraqi fighters are going into Lebanon to help the Hezbollah. I don't know to what volume, but we killed an Iraqi soldier up there and we found him. So we know that goes on. The Ultra-Orthodox demonstrators belonging to the extremist Jerusalem faction, among other groups, block Route 4 near the central Israel city of Bnei Brak, which is right by Tel Aviv. So they don't want to go in the army. They want the regular Jews, the inferior Jews that are not holy like them, to go out and have their kids killed in the military. Well, they stay and say they pray, but they don't pray. They read prayers from a prayer book and they read Psalms, and that's not praying. That's canned prayer imitation nonsense. So they don't even pray. They want to be paid by the rest of Israel, supported, and not go in the military because they're praying for Israel while they study an extra biblical book that contradicts the Bible. This is absurd. Okay. And they try to stay loyal to Netanyahu because he gives them whatever they want. They said, we prefer to die as Haredim rather than live as Israeli soldiers. One demonstrator screams. Photos from the scene show burning Israel flags and a fake tombstone emblazoned with the slogan, "We will die and not enlist," a common refrain at such demonstrations. I suppose I should explain this to you so you understand what's going on. This is the concept of what is referred to as fake Israel, okay? And they got more truth in this than they got falsehood in this, okay? First of all, the Lord does not refer to this land and us here now as Israel. He refers to it as Judah and Jerusalem. We don't have the land, and the 10 tribes, which is called Israel, are not here. So it's a fake Israel. It's not real Israel. Okay, why are they calling it real Israel? Well, they don't want Zionism getting to the point where, well, we want to get the 10 tribes here. We want to, get all our land from the Euphrates to the Nile. And this is a fear of the world, not something they want. So calling it Israel is not correct. If you talk to the Ultra-Orthodox, they'll tell you that we're going to have all this land. They know it, okay? Because that's one reason why Israel's a fake Israel. Another reason, now this is according to them more than anything, is Israel doesn't follow the Torah. Well, they don't follow the Torah either. They call the Kabbalah and they call the Talmud the Torah. It's not. And it's all modified and twisted and turned and different. It contradicts the Bible. So, of course, they're working on a concept of works for salvation, works of Moses' law, but they don't even do Moses' law. They do some other law they created. All right. Like, I don't know, any day now they're going to have Lag Omer, I think they call it, something like that. It's a day where they go out and burn wood. Did you ever read anything in the Bible where the Lord tells you go out and burn some scrap wood for a holiday? Gee, I never did either. Why? Well, it's really because it's not in the Bible. It's a holiday that doesn't exist in the Bible. They make a New Year day, Rosh Hashanah, that doesn't exist. It does, but it's not a New Year's. New Year's is the first year of the month. It's just not. It's not that. And they do all kinds of stuff that's not biblical. So the gripe that the Ultra-Orthodox has, the Haredim or the Haredi, is that Israel's not following their law, their Talmud, okay? Some rabbis do, but most don't. And the rabbis that are not Ultra-Orthodox rabbis are not legit in the eyes of these people either. So they got Netanyahu to let them be the only rabbis that could agree or approve people for marriage in Israel. Okay, because you can only be married in Israel if you're Jews. So they come down on people that they're born here, their mother was born here, and their grandmother was born here. Well, no, lived here. And they're Jews, and then they say, prove you're Jews, and they can't go back that far and prove they're Jews, so they say, well, you've got to convert. What do you mean? I've gone to synagogue and this and that. And they say, well, you didn't go to an Ultra-Orthodox synagogue, you know. The Israeli government considers them Jewish. The military considers them Jewish. But these rabbis, no, they're not Jews. So before they could get married in Israel, one or both of them may have to go convert, which is about a 3-year process and it costs a bunch of money. And they're not going to do that. It's the theater of the absurd. Yet Netanyahu lets him get away with it because he's a curse on Israel. And, you know, what's wrong with that? You know, hey, more problems for the Jews, you know. The concept of kosher food does not exist in the Bible. The concept of a bunch of rabbis charging the people money to certify their food kosher is, of course, not in the Bible anywhere, yet they do it. And I think they bring the food prices up at least 15-20%, something like that, okay? They kosher the slaughterhouse, they kosher the processor, the distributor, the retailers, they kosher the restaurants. I tell you, water bottles say kosher on them. Let's see if I can find it. I don't know if I can in this light with my eyes. No. I'd have to get a better water bottle where it's easy to see, but I've done that with you guys several times over the years. It says kosher on the water. They say kosher on the fish. Well, you could have an unclean fish, but have you ever read about unclean water? Well, I've read about poison water in the Bible. Unclean water? I don't know. I don't think so. I never read that. They have a type of koshering process called glatt. In English, Glatt, kosher. What does that mean? Glatt kosher means that the land, let's call them the cow or the goat or the sheep or whatever, you know, are on is free of unclean animals. So they don't have alligators there. They don't have elephants, camels, lions, you know, I don't know, giraffe. Oh, giraffe I think is clean. I don't know. But, you know, that type of thing. Okay, so there's no unclean animals walking around on the land where these critters are raised. Oh, okay. So let's see. Are horseflies kosher? No. Are they there? Yes. What about birds that would be unclean, like ravens and stuff like that go around eating the bugs on the livestock? Oh, yeah, they're there. They're unclean. Oh. So now let's just keep it simple. What about a snake or a worm that's also unclean? Or a caterpillar is unclean, right? So let's analyze this. So do they have unclean animals or critters, unclean critters running around where the livestock is? Yes. Do these unclean critters get in contact with the livestock? Yes. Oh. Oh. So what's the point of having glatt kosher? It's a scam, I think. What is the point of it? I don't know the point of it. What about Menahedrin? Menahedrin? I think it's Menahedrin. Now, this is a type of koshering, if you will, on fruit. Now, have you ever read in the Bible that there's an unclean fruit? Gee, I never did. No. Like unclean pineapple, unclean watermelon. No, I never read that. No. Well, they have it. They say that these fruits, like a pear or an apple, could have a microscopic bug in it, or a larva, or an egg laying from a bug in it from an unclean bug. You know, these are the same unclean bugs that walk around on the cows that they say are go out kosher, right? Okay. So they're telling you that these fruits that you pay extra money for, metahedron or mehedron, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, is um, certified by them not to have um, any of these little microscopic bugs in it that you don't really see with the naked eye. They're expensive. We know messianics that fall for this. When they kosher the food, what they're doing is there's a salt covenant with the Lord in the Moses law pertaining to the offerings, the animal offerings, that you would salt the animal offering before you gave it to the Lord to make sure there was no blood in it. Okay? But that is specifically stated to apply only to what's being offered to the Lord by the priesthood on the altar. Okay? So they took that and they applied it to your own personal residential food, your own personal food. So based on what? Nothing I could find in the Bible. Based on they liked it, they did it. You know, what does it do? How does it work? What goes on here? Well, they take a piece of meat, be it a chicken, a roast. I don't care what you want to, call it. Okay. Or a side of calf, and what they'll do is I don't know which comes first. I think they salt it first. They don't use the nice salt that comes out of the ocean, that kind of stuff. No, they use the big chunky salt, like what you would throw down on your driveway, with the snow and the slush and the ice. That's salt, okay? And that's not healthy salt. It's unhealthy salt, and they throw that in on the meat quite a bit, and they leave it there for a while. Just make sure there's no blood in there, right? Okay. Then they wash the meat off with water. I don't know if they pour it or hose it or I don't know, or dunk it. I'm not sure. They wash it with water, right? Then they resalt it again. Okay, a second time. Well, we want to make sure, we're the rabbis, and we're building a fence around the Torah to make sure you don't break the Torah. The Torah, we're going to put extra conditions in there that you need to comply to just to make sure. So they do it again, and then they hose it off again. Now, what does that do to the meat? Well, number one, you're eating a lot of not good meat. So I imagine it because of all the salt. So I imagine there's a lot of high blood pressure. They're not using the sea salt, the real good salt. No, they're using the other stuff, right? And all that washing of the meat becomes tasteless, tough, hard to eat, and it destroys the meat. Okay, plus they jack the price up. Rough cut about 20%, at least 15%. That's what brings the prices up. Okay? And they do it with everything. Moses' law says you're not supposed to mix the fabrics of linen and wool. They sell clothing where they examine the fabric with microscopes to make sure there's no linen and wool in there at the same time. They have a name for that clothing. I forgot what it is. It does not appear in Moses, law. I mean, or anywhere in the Bible, but certainly they made this one up. So you got to spend a fortune to get that kind of thing. Why is all this going on? I remember talking to an Orthodox Jew, and he knew I was Jewish, and he was trying to get me to go for it, right? And he said, and God gave us the law. And what did he mean? All right, I'll explain it to you. God gave us the law, which they believe means you have a big list of things you have to do and can't do, and if you do that, you're going to heaven. In a nutshell. And then they believe that the rabbis are there to tell you what to do, and the responsibility is on the rabbis for your mistakes if you're following their advice. Something like that. Okay? So they see the rabbi as a very useful tool. Now, the liberal Jews, there's, traditional, there's, what do they call themselves? Conservative Jews. They got different levels of Jews. They got Orthodox, conservative, and another kind of Jew that you could really just about be an atheist and be one of them. Then you have the Ultra-Orthodox. The Ultra-Orthodox have not much respect for anybody except Ultra-Orthodox. If there's no synagogue to go to near them, they might go to an Orthodox synagogue. The Orthodox, they might put up with that a little bit, but so they believe not in the weightier things of the law that Yeshua spoke about, like how you deal with the widows, the orphans, your fellow workers, your employees, your customers, your competitors, your family, how you deal in business, how you deal with your family, how you deal with your neighbor. And that's irrelevant. They don't pay attention to that really. All they're worried about is doing the law. So they'll rip off and rob their fellow Jews. Yet they're afraid that they'll lose their salvation, not for being a nasty, mean person to the other Jews and suing them and stuff like that, but they just get hung up on, I gotta follow the law, so I gotta shut my lights off in the house or not turn them on Shabbat or something like that. I got to use an automatic light thing that turns the lights on and off. So what they do, they believe that it says in Moses' law, you shall not kindle a fire on the Sabbath. Kindle usually means start. Okay, so if back then it was cold on the Sabbath, they would collect the firewood. This is how I think it went down. They would collect the firewood, stash the firewood, have the fire in the house burning before Shabbat. And then they would just flip the wood onto the flame to keep it going. Or what you're going to have is infants and small children sitting in the house when it's very cold outside, shivering, right? And what kind of Shabbat are they going to have being freezing cold? Makes sense? Like you're supposed to get up and water your animal and feed your animals. on Shabbat. Otherwise, what kind of Shabbat would they have? You're going to tell, Betsy the cow, well, you fast at Shabbat. You don't eat, you don't drink water. You wait till sundown. Your cow's going to be miserable. Go moo. No, they want to get fed. They don't know the difference in the days of the week. Although, honestly, we've had parrots that take a bath every Saturday. I can't figure that out. But we've had it. And it was consistency. So I don't understand that. Okay, so this is what they do. And they think that if they follow the law, they are going to go to heaven in spite of what they do to their wife and their kids and their neighbors and all of this stuff. Okay, this is what they've done to the people. They've ruined them. Okay, and on top of that, they cannot do the law, because if you break one part of the law, you broke the whole law. It says that in Moses' law. Now, there's no temple. There's no priesthood operating. There's no altar, no offerings, no nothing. So they're not fulfilling the law for 2,000 years. They might think they are, and that's their delusion. They're not. Yet they think they're okay. They're not okay. Because what happened is we shifted into the age of grace when the temple got burned in 70 AD, and the grace through Yeshua. Okay? Well, we shifted actually when Yeshua rose from the dead, we shifted into grace. Then. So you don't have to do these things in the law. Any of the works of the law, when you start doing them with a sense of I have to do these, you're saying I'm going to get saved by doing works. How could that be? Then you're downgrading what Yeshua did, i.e., that's the plan of the rabbis. That's their plan. But that's not our plan. Okay, so you can't do the works of the law. I mean, and you can't try to say, this is where a lot of Messianic Jews fall and get messed up. I don't want to say they fall because I'm not God, but they get messed up. They want to create something like this. I got to do the law and I got to believe in Yeshua by faith. Well, it doesn't work. If you're in grace, your righteousness came from the work Yeshua did when he died for you. Okay? That's your righteousness that Father God Jehovah accepts and recognizes. Now, if you start saying, oh, I got to do the Shabbat, I got to do this holiday, I got to do this, I got to do that, got to do that, right? Well, now you're saying the work that Yeshua did on the cross, well, it was really like this on the stake or the pole. Not this, it was this. But anyway, the work he did on the stake or the pole wasn't enough. You're saying that's not enough. Yeshua came down here, died, was born of the Holy Spirit, born of a flesh woman, died horribly for you, lived for you 30-something years, died for you, rose from the dead for you, did all this stuff for you, and Jehovah recognizes that as good and sufficient. And then, no, you come along and say, no, that's not enough. Yeshua didn't do enough. I got to go out there and I got to do the law. I can't eat this. I got to eat this. I can't walk on this. I got to do this. I can't do this. I got to do this. I can't do this. Why are you doing that? Because that's how you're going to get to heaven, based on that. Now you're into works. You're either into works or you're not into works. There's no middle ground. Okay? You can't get anywhere on works. There's no temple. There's no priesthood. There's no altar. If you break one part of the law, you broke it all. You're breaking a gazillion parts of the law every day. Nobody did the law for 2,000 years, roughly. Nobody, not a single person. Nobody, nobody, nobody. If you break one part of the law, you break it all. No offerings, no altar, no this, no that, no temple, no priesthood, no. You're breaking it like crazy. You're breaking it all over the place, and then you're running around saying, "Oh, I'm so holy, I'm rubbing this off on myself," you know. See, you tell people, the way you help people is you talk to them, you explain to them, break one part of the law, you broke the whole law. You're not saved by works. You're saved by faith, by the work Yeshua did. He gave you your righteousness. That's the age of grace. You don't need the law to get righteousness. You got Yeshua to do it for you. That's the whole thing. That's what it's really about. And then they try to play the end on, oh, I got to eat Mehedrin food, or I got to do this, observe this holiday, or I got to. They even observe the rabbinical holidays. They'll go to on Rosh Hashanah. They'll eat honey like the rabbi, fruit with honey. How sweet it is, and, it's mind-boggling how crazy it is. Okay. And who's keeping these Israelis in bondage? Well, the Ultra-Orthodox. They're the rabbis, the top rabbis. And they're making them think that they're getting somewhere by works, where, Yeshua did the works of the law, but maybe I don't know if other people did or not. It says nobody did it but Yeshua, but in other places in the Bible it says that I think John the Baptist's parents did it or something. They observed the law. But moving along. Remember the angel came to see the woman, and the guy was saying, about calling his name John, and he couldn't talk until he said his name is John, right? Okay, and yet he went to one of the women, I think Yeshua's mother, maybe it was Gabrielle told her something like that, and then she said, "Okay, let it be as you say," and then the angel said, "Well, I'm cool with her. She's cool." Okay, and he just left. She's good. I don't need to do anything else. She's cool, And she didn't argue with him. She didn't try to straighten him out, or usually they can ask a question. As long as it's not something where you're trying to create going adversarial to what they're telling you. If you're trying to get some clarification because you truly, really inside don't understand something, I believe you would receive your clarification. If it was a real, you really needed it to understand, you didn't understand, Okay, but anyway, so where are we? So we got this problem with these Ultra-Orthodox, and now they're trying to say we're super Jews and we don't go fight wars. You fight the wars for us. You and your kids get killed, not ours. We're better than you. Based on what? Nothing. Following the law where the law says if you break one part of the law, you broke it all. Well, they don't follow Moses' law. They wrote their own law called the Talmud. And they doctored their law up to suit whatever they wanted it to say. Oh. That's what you got. So people in Israel are getting sick and tired of the Haredim. Netanyahu's not. Netanyahu, because they vote for him, is very comfortable making the government of Israel give them money to support them and not drafting them because they keep voting for him. They got 30 votes out of 120. No, I'm sorry, 15. 15, I'm sorry. Was Shahs and United Torah Judaism. They run about 7, 8 votes per party. So they get about 15 votes out of 120, and that's substantial. Bennett is not going to work with these ultra-Orthodox. If he wins, Bennett's going to be working with the left wing instead. So the ultra-Orthodox are going to be up the creek without a paddle. In other words, they're going to be going in the draft. They're going to be losing the control over who's a Jew in Israel to get married, who's a Jew to make Aliyah and come live in Israel. And they're not going to be able to have a monopoly over. You can't call any business a kosher business. Only we can. Now, where in the Bible did you ever read about a kosher restaurant or a kosher business? It doesn't exist. They manufacture that. And then they give kosher certificates to businesses. So they're making merchandise out of God's people, are they not? They absolutely are. But they wrote their own Bible to allow them to do these things. I think I'm getting through. You guys are probably getting some clarity about this now. I don't know. Netanyahu's going to be mediating with the courts to get some sort of settlement. I don't know what's going on. I think it's timed with, it's time to get ready to campaign. It's 6 months usually. So October, September, August, July, June, May. Yeah, so we're April already. So yeah, he's getting ready to start his campaign for prime minister. So I don't think he's going to be doing anything in terms of saying just don't prosecute me and I won't go into politics again. No, I don't think that's the case at all. It might be, I'll mediate with you and let me off the hook. Otherwise, Herzog's going to give me a pardon. Herzog's going to pardon him, and then the Supreme Court is probably going to protest the pardon based on something. I don't know what, but something. Usually they get pardoned, although they say in Israel it's not mandatory, but usually you have to be guilty of something. And Netanyahu technically is not guilty of anything because he won't admit it. So he's just accused. So it's doubtful that Netanyahu would admit these crimes because his competitors in the race for prime minister would use that against him. So I don't know what's going to happen. Trump's putting a lot of pressure on Herzog to pardon Netanyahu. Now, if he gets a pardon, the people that are his adversaries in the race for prime minister are going to use that heavily against him too. They're not going to just let him get away. So it's going to be very interesting. The Israel's foreign minister acknowledges there will be no West Bank annexation. President Trump does not support it. There we go. And everybody's going to say how much Trump loves Israel. Foreign ministers are told members of the Likud, Friends of America, that we have no intention of doing this, at least in the coming months. He also talked about the war in Iran. the upcoming elections, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Trump told them to not annex the West Bank. They said, okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Trump, we'll do whatever you say. This is Trump talking now. Iran has just informed us that they are in a state of collapse. They want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out the leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. So I don't believe this. I don't think that the Iranians would tell Trump that they're in a state of collapse. I doubt it. I just don't believe that. Qatar bribed the International Criminal Court to act against the state of Israel, according to a Wall Street Journal report. Qatar informed the ICC, International Criminal Court, tied to the UN, prosecutor Karim Khan, that if he issues an arrest warrant against Prime Minister Netanyahu and accuses Israel of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza, they will take care of him. Which it's meaning that we're bribing this guy. Qatar really is an enemy of Israel, but now they learned that Iran is an enemy of theirs. So I don't know if anybody's going to blow the Iranian train tracks up. I think that's something that Netanyahu would love to do, but he's got to check with Trump because it can infuriate Iran, not Iran, China, and I'm worried about that. The amphibious assault ship USS Boxer, with thousands of Marines, maybe 2,000 to 2,500, in the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command so it's in the Indo-Pacific Command area, is headed to the Middle East. It's expected to arrive in the region in theater in the coming days, thereby completing the extensive deployment. Well, I believe the Iwo Jima is chugging over here too. I think that I've been reading that it's coming over here, but it's not here yet. Well, we read that about the George Bush for many weeks till it finally showed up, and then it did. Southern Lebanon is loaded with Israeli flags. That's because we're occupying it there and cleaning out Hezbollah, the rat's nests. As long as Hezbollah remains an armed organization, we are here to stay. That means Israel ain't leaving as long as there's a Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I don't think they should. The Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, reveals Iran's Karg Island about to max out of oil. In other words, too much is going in. And that could be the case because the trains are not filling up at Karg Island, they're filling up elsewhere. Karg Island is 15 miles offshore, so the pipeline is still dumping oil into the storage tanks on Karg Island, as far as we know. So Iran's inflation has doubled and their currency has rapidly descended again. I mean, it's down low anyway. Germany is saying, well, it's not Germany. The Iranians are looking at permanent. Let's take a look at our live stream here and see what's cooking. Not on a live stream. Let's get back. See if I got any. Yep, so it says vipers like serpent. Yeah, that's what they do. They twist the scriptures. Yeah, if you don't agree with Yeshua, you're in a bad way. Need to buy the kosher stuff. Approved, yes. Truly, brood of vipers. Yeah, they make the food so expensive. Gosh. No draft for the Ultra-Orthodox to help defend it. They're not defending Israel. They're not praying. They don't pray. They say they pray, but it's not. It's false. It's not prayer. Reading out of a prayer book or reading out of a book like Psalms. I mean, if you're going to pray, they say if someone's sick and they're in the hospital, they say, oh, go read a psalm for them. If somebody you knew was sick in the hospital, would you go open up Psalm 27 or something and read it Or would you pray for them? You pray for them. They don't even know how to pray. We've got examples of people praying in the New Testament. I mean, you know how to pray. I mean, they don't pray. You ever hear like Apostle John or Paul or something go, well, I'm going to go pray for them. Where's my book of prayers? I'm going to open up to this prayer. That's not a prayer. I mean, could you really do that? Let's think. Would God honor that? You're reading a can. No, your heart's not in it. That's not your spirit in it. I don't think. I mean, he could do whatever he wants, but I don't think that's really. If God accepts that, which I don't know. I mean, I'm not God. I don't want to say, but I don't think so, because it's not really praying. You know, if he meant prayer to mean that, he would say, when you pray for me, get a prayer book from the rabbis and pray that. You know, he doesn't say that. He wants you to pray with your heart, with your spirit, and really apply yourself, you know. We did have a prayer, what's the right word? Positive feedback that the prayer worked well. Somebody was going to court on some matter, and it was one member of the family going to court, and they got a very excellent outcome. We were praying for this person. I was disguising the prayer a little bit, but not much. And they got a real good outcome. I didn't want to embarrass the people. That's why I was kind of keeping it kind of concealed. So I don't know why this thing is clicking like that. I think there's something not right about this charger. I don't usually use this charger and cable, but this morning the thing wasn't charging, and it was hot as all get up. It's warm here now, and the charger was really hot. So I turned the fan on and I blew it on the iPad and the charger, and then lo and behold, it started charging like a champ. I'll be right back. Not yet. You have not because you ask not. Now, a lot of people, well, I'm not a millionaire. Maybe I need to ask someone to be a millionaire. I'm not going down that road. Look, let me tell you some of the things that I've learned. If you were a millionaire and you were a believer, you would be coming under so much attacks. They would try to take you to court in a corrupt court. Every court's corrupt. Every gambling casino cheats. Okay, get that. Every stock market's rigged. Get that down. Okay, they would try to rip you off. Get all your money. Because in their mind, you can't fight back. You can. But they don't know that. And, you'd have to be fighting them all the time, which when I had money was the case. I was doing it all the time. I was constantly getting attacked, They'll get you anyway. They'll get you from your family. They'll get you from a cleaning lady. You'll hire a cleaning lady to come to the house twice a week or something, and they'll find out that she's going there, and they'll convert her to Satanism, and then she'll start cursing you. It's just going to come at you all the time. I was moving out of the house. I had an alarm system for like 3 years. I had no contract. I had 1 year contract, and I never signed another contract with them, right? So they say, oh, you're moving out. Well, you have to pay anyway, because you got to give us notice, and you need to give us a year's notice or something like that. So you know what I did to them? I said, listen, if you don't just cancel this, I'm going to get a lawyer, and I'm going to sue you. We're going to get in front of the judge. I'm going to tell the judge what you said, okay? And I'm telling you, I will not stop the lawsuit until the trial is complete. I will not just walk away from it. You push this, that's what you're going to get. And they didn't, as far as I know, they didn't do anything. Why did I say that? Because in a lot of communities in America, this was years and years ago, they would not tolerate things like that. They had the community made the Satan bought deals fairly. Otherwise, it would be, it'd be hard for the businesses to survive. This is when I was in the world making a lot of money. I ordered a Porsche Turbo. And the guy at the store says, well, you need to give me a deposit. I said, what do you want? He says, how about $5,000? I said, fine. I gave him $5,000 deposit. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then I get a phone call, and they say, your Porsche is here. But we need, because these things are worth more money now, we could sell them over window sticker price. We need another $10,000 or $9,000 from you. So I said, that's not fair. When you order a car and wait for it and put a deposit down, you get it at the window price, which is true, what I just said. They said, no, we need more money for it. So I went to my lawyer, who was a big shot lawyer, and I told him what happened. And he said that, no, you tell them this. Tell them that I said this, and, that I'm going to defend you, basically, and blah, blah, blah. So we did that. And I gave him a little extra money just so there wouldn't be a lot of bad feelings. But, that's the kind of thing they pull on a believer. They're always being nasty to you, right? And this is what you get. They're coming after you left, right, and center. Every time you turn around, they're trying to get you here, there. Now, in the area I was living in, they had restraints on this stuff. But if you're in a big city, those restraints generally don't exist. You can just do whatever you want and you can get away with, So if you're living, I was in an area that was in one case about 40,000, 40,000 or less. And in another area I was living, it was 100,000. So these areas at that time were trying to control things and not let, I don't know how things are anymore in America, but these are the kind of things I would get into, you know. Um, and it was annoying, It was annoying. I had a problem with a boat. I bought a boat. I didn't. It's a long story. I never should have bought the boat, but I found out the boat wasn't the brand new boat, and they sold me a new boat, and I wanted them to take the boat back. Anyway, so I started a lawsuit with them. I never should have done this. So I called the bank up, and they said, "Well, you got to make the payments. We don't care about any of this. You got to make the payments." I said, "Okay," so I'm making the payments. I call this lawyer, a big shot in the town there, and he says, "Okay." He says, "This is a lousy, it's a small case." He says, "We got a new member of the firm, a woman. Let her take it. I'll oversee her, and stuff like that." So she takes the case, and the case is progressing, and the guy doesn't want to move. He just wants to, keep in the case. And then the case starts developing, and then I think they change lawyers or something. It starts to develop, and they um, they said something that they were going to subpoena the whole record of the boat from the Department of Motor Vehicles. That's who handles boats then. And the boat may not be used, this and that. So the first thing that comes to my mind is this jerk lawyer should have subpoenaed the records herself as soon as we got into this lawsuit. Now she first thinks about it, so I said, "I'm dealing with an idiot." I don't think she was trying to sabotage me. I think she was an espot, but I think she just wasn't smart. So what happens next? Well, I went and got my good lawyer to take the case. I said, "Come on, help me with this. This is all getting screwed up. Let me get out of this." And da 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 da. He says, "All right, all right, all right. Let's go, let's go." So he jumps on the case, and then the guy that owned the boat company that I was dealing with, he upped and died. He dies. So then they say they're going to give me $5,000 to go away, and we'll just settle it. They'll take the boat and give me $5,000, and that's the end of it. So I said, "Okay." That's about what I spent on it, maybe more, I don't know. So then there's no money coming. So over the years, I learned about lawyers and law. Once I was, a girlfriend was a lawyer. I had a very good friend, like a best friend for years. He's dead now. Was a lawyer, and he taught me a lot of stuff. And I had a business once where I had a lawyer full time. So I learned a bunch of stuff about lawyers, right? So she didn't want to pay me, so I went and I I said, I think I had the private detective look the estate up for me or something. I knew the estate. Either I did it or the private detective did it. Somebody, and I called the lawyer up and I said, hey, she's not paying me. Let's cloud the title. I'll start filing the claim against, from the lawsuit against all the estates that the guy left her, all the property that she was going to get. And just she said she was going to pay and didn't pay. That's what Satan bots do, right? So I told him, let's go do that. We'll file. And he says, no, wait a minute. Let me call her. Let me, see, he was sympathetic to her, but that's okay. I just wanted my money and he got the money, he was an expire. But all the good lawyers are usually expires. Uh, I had big companies sue me over what I was doing on the internet for a living, and they didn't like it. They would sue me. Um, they're just crazy. These big companies, what they'll do. So one guy went after me. He was in a huge, maybe $1 trillion company. And while he was harassing me, private detectives were coming around and, sicko stuff that they do. Um, he uh, he got caught doing a fraud. Somebody in his, of course, this is a coincidence, right? Well, we don't believe in coincidence. Somebody in his company exposed him to the government what he was doing with buying expensive, rare artwork, the way he was having it delivered using the company and this and that. He was beating the taxes, I think the sales tax, which if you buy a 10 or $20 million company and you're paying 6 or 7% sales tax or something, it's a lot of money. And he went to prison. And, I mean, I could keep going. It just was so stupid. Um, yeah, so, you're going to get, if you're going to get all this money, you're going to really need to know what you're doing with spiritual warfare. And I tell you, it's going to take a lot of your time. And they're constantly laying in wait for you. You got to be really careful. Look, of course, this curse doesn't come. So, but a lot of them are such stupid Satan bots that they don't think anything would ever happen to them, like this big rich guy with the company. He wound up going to jail for years, using all his big money to come after me. That, I really didn't do anything to the guy at all. He's just being a jackass. It was actually someone that worked for us as an independent contractor that did something without our permission that he didn't like. And he was trying to come after us. We didn't even know that this guy was doing it until after the fact we found out he was doing. So I mean, we didn't even do anything. This guy did, and he was trying to come after us. It's just really stupid, you know. Um, really stupid. Uh, and the guy really didn't do anything that wrong anyway. He just did something he didn't do anything illegal. He did something the company didn't like. There's a big difference between illegal and something. I knew a guy, and he came to me for advice. He built a modification for a game, a term of service, when a computer game, like what the kids play. I don't remember what the game was. It was a really big, popular game. And the guys that have these big popular games are Satan bots. If you have a great game and you're not a Satan bot, the chances of it ever going anywhere are pretty slim. You're not going to get any money to promote it yourself, and it's going to fall apart. So they were, they were probably up around $30-50 million stage at this point. They had good money. So they said their terms of service said you can't make a modification to the program if you buy it or something like that, right? So you have to agree to the terms of service when you install the program before the program will run. So he made an add-on that would help people win when they compete with other people on the internet at this game. I don't know much about it. I don't do that. I never once competed in a game on the internet. Maybe for 4 or 5 times in my life being on the internet since about 1994, I ever took a look at a game just to see what they look like. Maybe, every few years I'd look at a game. So, he was getting sued by them, So I told him he was making good money. Okay, good money. Not millions, but a lot of money. I said to him, what you need to do is get all your assets out of the United States and move to another country. And then you'll get out of the soup. But you got to move to a country that doesn't have reciprocity with the United States in lawsuits, because they would file a lawsuit in America even though you're not there anymore, and then they would try to file it in the country you're in. But if there was no reciprocity between that country and America, they couldn't do it, and they're just not going to do it. They don't go out of their jurisdiction. I never really figured out why, but they don't like to do it. That's because there's different demon powers in the other country, and the court system is run by different demons in that country, and they don't know how they're going to be able to, they just, you're not any good to them anyway. But if you had $50 million or something, they might try it to get your money, So he didn't have that much. So I told him just move away, and he said, no, I said, what are you doing for lawyers? Well, there were some guys in my neighborhood, He made the classical mistake. He went to a law firm with 3 or 4 lawyers, a regular neighborhood law firm, and the big law firms take those guys and chew them up and spit them out. The guys can't hold up. They usually, I would say that you don't have 100% chance of losing with a law firm like that. You probably have an 80% chance of losing, no matter what the case is. If the case is really, really strong, then you're going to do okay. If the people really suing you went out in left field and they got no law, they just completely illegally went after you, just for the heck of it, the judge is probably going to be afraid to do anything about it. And he's going to try to, get a settlement or get rid of them or something like that. He's not going to want to do that. But I told him he's going to lose, and they're going to take your house, your car, everything. And that's what happened to him. He was not a believer. They just cleaned him out to put him out of business. That's all. They didn't care about getting his money. They didn't need his money, and they probably, if they got 200,000 or 300,000 from him, they might have spent that much at the law firm. They didn't want him messing with their product because he was watering down their product. So they were suing him because they were saying it's illegal for you to build an app or a program that works with our program to modify it. Now, I don't know the law and computers and stuff like that, but apparently the court went with that because they put it in their terms of service. But if he would have went to a law firm with, say 300 or 400 lawyers, they probably would have found ways to call that an unconscionable contract and fight against that, and stuff like that. They probably would have been able to resolve it with him saying he'll stop selling it and everything goes away. That would have been the desirable result, and then he would have had to go find himself another program and build another app and do it again, somebody else, if he wanted to continue on this path. That's likely what the outcome would have been. And it probably would have happened early on too, because when these big law firms see they're coming up against another big law firm, all of a sudden they start worrying about all the nonsense that they've created. They're stretching points and making things up, and they're dealing with a little bunch of guys in the law firm. If it gets bad, they start burying the law firm with paperwork, writs, motions, subpoenas, summary judgments, all kinds of stuff like that. They just start loading them up. And they don't like that because they're not set up for it, So a lot of people don't understand that if you're going to fight a big law firm using a big company with deep pockets, using a big law firm, you got trouble. You got trouble. And they do this all the time, There was one company, what the heck was, I don't know, one of these financial companies moved to Wyoming. Anyway, I can go on and on, but they are, in America, they're really bad. In Europe, they're not that bad, but it goes on. They don't let it get as bad as it does in America. I don't know about Asia, what goes on, but America's horrible, what goes on. I mean, it's just ridiculous, what they get away with. They could sue you without serving you in the lawsuit. They draft the lawsuit and they file it in the court, right? But they never serve you. So you would not know that you got a lawsuit unless you were some big litigious company that has a private detective or one of these people go to the courthouse every day and check, which is stupid because you don't know what courthouse they'll file it in, and it could be anywhere in the country. So they file the lawsuit. They don't give it to you, so you don't know you sued. Then they appear to the court. They get a hearing in the court without you knowing that and without you being there. And then they tell the judge that they don't want you to know about the lawsuit because you're going to go out and hire a big law firm, and they said all the money's going to be wasted in legal bills. You listening to this? Meanwhile, they're charging their client, $1,500 an hour or something like that, right? But no, it's the money's going to be wasted. Hold on a second. I don't know what this is. I don't know who this is. I think it's delivery. Don't know what this is about. I don't know what this guy's. See what he says. So they tell the judge that if he knows there's a lawsuit, he's going to move his money. He might send it to a Swiss bank, or he might put it in someone else's name. He might sell his cars, his Ferraris, and the pot of gold at the rainbow disappears. And so we want to file this lawsuit without him knowing about it, and we want to get a writ or whatever they call it. A lien, I guess, of some sort, where we want the court to freeze his bank accounts, the title to his house, and the title to his cars. We got everything well laid out for you. And of course, in case we're wrong, Your Honor, we'll post a bond with the court for $1 million. So if we're wrong, he doesn't have to worry about collecting the $1 million. He just gets it from the bonding company, right? So the judge, if it's a law firm that's a big law firm, and they're the ones that go around politically getting the judges appointed, he's going to honor it. And then you wake up in the morning and there's a bunch of marshals there taking your car and putting it into storage. And I don't think they could throw you out of the house. They can basically just freeze the title of your house. But I think there were cases where the guy had a lot of, expensive furniture and stuff, and they froze that. And they froze all his bank accounts. So you got to listen to this. Then you got to go back to the same rotten judge and say, Your Honor, I got to get a lawyer to defend myself, and my money's frozen. I need to release the money. Then the judge works with the other side. And yeah, they got to get you a lawyer, but they're not going to get you an expensive lawyer. Yet they're the expensive lawyers. And they do this stuff. And they get away with it in America. And they crush poor people like this. Let me see what I got going on here. I don't know. What? Hold on, let me call this guy. I don't know what this is going on. Hi, you're sending me pictures. Did you put the package in my yard or something? Huh? You're shaliach, Ken? Yeah. You want me, ani boy l'rachov derek ha-shaker akshav? Okay, I need boy right now. Okay, I come now. All right, guys, I gotta go out. Hello? Hello? Yeah, I'm coming out. Right? Yeah, I'm coming. I'm sorry, that's life in Israel. I had to go out in the street and look for the guy, and he's looking for me, and he was a nice guy. Uh, sorry. Um, okay. So, when you think about it, with this guy who wrote the add-on for the computer game, he was wrecking the guy's business that was selling the game, because people would buy this, I don't know what it was, an add-on attachment to the game, and they would be able to win. Now, I don't know if there was gambling, I don't know. But if he had a good law firm, they would have argued that the guy had a flaw. You can't write a terms of service agreement with people and say, if you violate this, you shall give me your firstborn child. You got to have limits, So, they didn't know how to deliver. The regular lawyers didn't know how to get the guy out of it. But so, the big law firm lawyers don't think that the regular lawyers that work in a little office, one or two lawyers, are real lawyers. Okay. So I don't know what's going on with Netanyahu here. I have a feeling that what we're in for is this curse on Israel called Netanyahu's going to get another 4 years as prime minister, if prophetic time goes that long. That's what I think. I don't think we're going to get rid of him till Enoch and Elijah move in. The two witnesses, I don't think we're going to get rid of him. No. I just don't think so. It's just going to be more punishment and stuff like that. He might try to keep us out of wars. If he doesn't have any more criminal cases on his head, he doesn't have any reason to throw us into war. It's just terrible, The more and more he's in office, the more and more discrimination I pick up against people that aren't native-born Israelis. I don't care if they come from France, Italy, Australia, Canada, U.S., Mexico, Rio de Janeiro. I don't care where they come from. They get discriminated against. Yeah. Can you reduce the discrimination? Yeah, if they get the impression you've lived here for 40 years or 50 years and you've got tremendous fluency and stuff like that in the language, yeah. See, before Netanyahu, they used to teach, it's called OPEC language school. It was basically free. And they taught it, and the people were learning how to speak Hebrew like the Israelis. Under Netanyahu, they changed it and they teach the people how to speak Hebrew not like the Israelis, so they stand out. Little things, but when you add them all up, you get into discrimination. You get into an emphasis of keeping the Jewish people from emigrating to Israel, and worse, you get an emphasis on getting the Jewish people to leave Israel, move out of Israel. And they're concealing how many left, but we think it's about 400,000 from the wars, but we don't know. We don't know. They don't do a census in Israel. I've never seen a census taker or anything like that in Israel. It doesn't exist. You also don't have private detectives in Israel. They don't exist, for whatever that's worth. We were talking about them, so I threw it out there. But that's a common thing. In a lot of countries, they make a private detective illegal. Um, so what's going to be with us? Another term with Netanyahu, or perhaps things will be over before then. I hope things will be over before then. I keep getting the impression, I think I'm getting it from the Lord, that things can happen so fast now. You wouldn't believe it. But we got to wait. So the Iran thing, Iran's going to be destroyed. They're going to all have to leave Iran, scatter into all the countries of the world. The sword will follow them, and I believe it's going to include Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, and Iraq, and maybe a piece of Syria, maybe not, maybe. I think it's going to include them, and then Yemen will get it. Now, Yemen could also get it, of course, of the Houthis. It's called Edom, biblically. And their destruction is also in Jeremiah 49, but it doesn't give us any firm idea who destroys them, but it says they get destroyed so bad, like Daughter of Babylon, nobody lives there anymore. Now, when we're dealing with the destruction of Elam, which is Iran and likely Iraq, and these other countries, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, and Oman, don't exist in the Bible. There's no such countries there. So they're lumped into this Elam, okay? Because there are no such countries in the Bible. God has 70 countries, and they have over 200 the nations made up. So there's a lot of countries that aren't in existence in the Bible. So they would really just be divisions of Elam. All right, so they um, they go. All right, and then that's going to knock out. So what you finish with here, let me just spell it out for you. Iran, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia is not in there. That is a country, Arabia. That's not part of them. Okay, so they go. Um, let's check and see something about current day Saudi Arabia. See, I got this same annoying pop up here that has no X to close it. And it just says to open it, and I am not going to open it. I don't know how to get rid of it. Daily Tai Chi plan? Where would I ever get something like this? It's got arrows to press. Yeah, this is it. I never saw this thing. So when you try to make it go away, it doesn't go away. It keeps coming back. Now I don't know what to do. Let's see if I close it up. Yeah, I close it. It goes away. I got to figure out where it's coming from and then get it out of there. I got rid of it. Let's see. According to the Bible, in the old days of the Old Testament, is modern day Saudi Arabia part of the Old Testament, like Jeremiah 49, Edom, Edom? See if we can get an answer on this. Modern Saudi Arabia is not directly identified as Edom in the Bible, but parts of northwest Saudi Arabia may overlap with regions connected to Edom or related peoples. So now they're saying that this is AI saying that it's concerning Jordan. No, I don't believe so. It's saying Edom is mainly southern Jordan. No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that's churchianity trying to confuse people from seeing prophecy fulfilled. That's all I see here. Yeah, nobody really knows. It's a possibility that we're not aware of one way or the other. So, I mean, I can't say that it's the case, and I can't tell you it's not the case. It could be. That's all we know. So it's this is a common thing you get with these countries and the names they got now. It's not always determined who's on first and what's going on. So we just got to wait and watch. But there might be some interruptions in the destruction of Iran. The people, it could become so bad that the people just start leaving slowly, and then there's more destruction. I don't know, but it's going to wind up getting to the point where they can't live there. Now, as I figure, the only thing that you need to do to make it so that people can't live there is get rid of the water desalination and get rid of the electrical generators, and you're done. Electrical generators, you're not going to have any water desalination, and if you, on top of that, kill the water desalination plants, you're not going to have it. That's all you got to do, and then they got to leave. So we're right on the edge of it. They don't all get killed. That's not it. They get killed when they're scattered into the nations, which is what they want for the Jews, to get scattered into the nations and then get picked off. That type of thing. So it happens to them. They reap what they sow. So I was getting tired every time I ate food. And I tried eating food without any carbs, like straight meat. And I'd get tired and take a nap after that. So I'm doing this and I'm fighting it. And then I finally just prayed. I asked the Lord to stop me from being tired and sleepy after I eat anything. And it worked. You have not because you ask not. So you got to learn to ask. But most people are, you know, going to ask for a Mercedes Benz, and you can't do that. I mean, you can do it, but. So pray I get to finish setting up the new iPad, and if you wouldn't mind, and I'll do a prayer for us. I'll also pray I get good results proceeding through my travels with the private and public sectors for the welfare. I gotta push through that. It's expensive. We pay for somebody to clean the house now because my wife can't do it anymore, and I don't see good enough to do it right. So we pay, and that we should be able to get that to go away, um, and get the government will give us people to clean the house, or they give you the money and you hire the people. They'll do it either way. But I hope that works, so we get rid of this expense we have on our head. And then if I get the certified with the bad vision, I get opens up the door to a lot of other things that we could get. You could get Meals on Wheels, or you could also get packages of food that you prepare. So it could cut some of the food bill down, but generally the food is not so good. It's basic stuff to stay alive, and they have a balance. They run it through the local communities, so it's government sponsored and it's reliable, but it's done by dietitians. So you have a little of this, a little of that. It's well balanced, but it's not high quality food. So I don't know how well we would do with that. Plus, my wife's on a carnivore diet, which is working for her post stroke, and they're not going to give you anything to support a carnivore diet. If you want to tell them you're a vegetarian, they'll support that, I'm sure, but that's probably about it. Beulah ran away again yesterday. She was just gone a few minutes, but she found a loophole in the connecting of the yards where there was a little bit of an opening and a little rat squeezed through it. She must have took some fur off. She runs out, and she didn't like being out because I went out to go look for her, and she was waiting at the gate for me to open it up. So she was, I don't know what happened. She came back home. She must have been hot. I don't know. We try to convey to her we don't like it, and she thinks it's perfectly normal that she could jump a fence or run away and go run around the neighborhood and visit her friends, dog friends, and then come back home. She wants to go check up on her friends and see how they're doing and get the latest news, and I don't know what she needs. She has a friend across the street that's rarely ever outside, but I don't know what he is, a poodle or something. That's one friend she has, and then I think she has another couple of friends we don't know. She's not the kind of dog that goes around and makes fights. She goes around making friends. If Mommy and her, the two of them, got out, they'd be gone for an hour, hour and a half. They wouldn't come home till they were hungry and thirsty. But Mommy doesn't run away. So when Beulah came home, Mommy was inside the fence. Beulah was outside, and Mommy was growling at her. Because she knows that Beulah's not supposed to go out. But what she doesn't know is she's not the enforcer. The last thing we need is Mommy punishing Beulah, So prayer is needed with Beulah. Thank you. All right. So we'll keep updating on this, but it's unlikely that Iran's going to just sit there and let Trump wreck the country and the oil and all that. Okay. On the other hand, it's unlikely that Trump's going to let Iran run a lot of oil out on the trains so his blockade doesn't clog up and bog down their oil infrastructure. So we're headed to war. I mean, you got to understand that. Iran is crazy. I don't know what kind of concessions they're going to make with Trump, but they're not going to be, we won't support Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. We'll reduce our ballistic missile program. We won't have nukes ever. We'll forget war reparations. We'll never try to control the Persian Gulf and charge tolls. They're never going to agree to any of this, Never. We're going to turn over all that uranium we enriched. It's not going to happen. Okay. So it's just an interruption in the war, that's all. And I don't know what Trump up has his sleeve with the special forces and with all the constant flow of aircraft into the Middle East for weeks. I don't know what in the heck he's up to next, but we'll see. So I'll get a prayer out for all of us. So I appreciate the prayers you're doing for me. I really do. Sometimes I think I ride on your prayers. All right. So my Heavenly Father, Jehovah, I pray for me and my wife and all the true believers and their households that we would all have your strength, stamina, and endurance, and we would have your healing and recuperative power flowing through us, fixing things all the time that need fixing or healing. And we pray for our animals and pets and ourselves to be safe and secure and happy, healthy, and whole. And I pray I can do better videos and live streams. And I pray that for the peace of Jerusalem. I pray that if any of you people that are true believers, need to get a good job, you get a good job with good pay. And I pray if you have your own business as true believers and you need clients and customers, you get that too. And I pray that we all have enough money to be adequate and meet our needs, and plus some extra. I pray we all learn more about the Bible and can walk in the scriptures better and more completely. And I pray thinking. Well, and I pray all this to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, now spiritual warfare. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, for me and my wife and all the true believers and their families and households, I pray that I loose from off all these people any witchcraft or sorcery from unclean spirits and people serving the unclean spirits. It's all null and void, no value, no effect forever. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And you believers should be agreeing with all of this stuff, okay? And I also, B'Shem, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I command all the unclean spirits that are in any true believer's household or family to depart from these people immediately and never return unto them again ever. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that too. Okay? So what else? That's it, I guess, and I'll keep you guys updated. I don't know how quick things are going to flare up. Trump doesn't seem to be in any hurry. I think the Iranians, now that they're selling oil by railroad, are not in any hurry either. I imagine they're getting enough oil out there to take the load off of their tanks so the tanks won't back up and cause problems in the pipeline. So I think they got time now too, and they're rebuilding their missile cities and get ready for the next phase of the war. Netanyahu's not able to open up the war with Iran because Trump will have his head. He's got to go with Trump, so that's why he's trying to deal with his criminal cases now. And I think that that Netanyahu might be afraid that the Supreme Court of Israel, the High Court, would block him from running for prime minister again because of the criminal cases. They might try something like that, and that might be real painful for him. And I think that's why he's trying to deal with it now. We'll see. Okay, So I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'm out. Thanks, guys. I hope you got something out of this.